I think it's getting, in the mindset that just because this didn't work out for you, it has nothing to do with your abilities. You shouldn't let it shake your confidence. I know, when I work with my clients who have lost their jobs, a lot of times they take it personally, even though it has nothing to do with their abilities.
Hey, Colleen, welcome to the show.
Hey, Max, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
The reason why I wanted to bring you on was you made a post on LinkedIn about how to recover from getting a job offer rescinded. I understand like there are layoffs that happen, but I don't see that much about job offers getting rescinded until recently because of the recession. So before we dive into how to recover from getting your job offer rescinded, is getting your job offer rescinded common?
Yeah, so I don't think it's super common. And let me say too, there's different reasons why folks can get their job offers rescinded. What I posted about was, Amazon was rescinding offers because they decided that they didn't need these folks anymore. But you can have your job offer rescinded if you don't pass the background check. You can have your job offer rescinded. Let's say you were supposed to graduate from college and you didn't finish. I have a case I heard of, several years back of someone who was offered an offer, was expected to graduate from college first, and then failed English, and so had to basically had the offer pulled. That's a different case. Those are cases where your offer is rescinded because you didn't hold up to your end of the bargain. In these cases, with the Amazon case recently, and this happened with Twitter over the summer and Coinbase, these folks did nothing wrong, and the company decided, sometimes it was the day that the people were supposed to start, decided that they didn't need them anymore. And so those are the cases that I'm seeing. Does it happen all that often? It feels like it's somewhat rare, but I certainly am seeing more of it now, especially in the tech space.
When the job offer gets rescinded, is there anything the person can do about it? Can they say, "Oh, can you extend it a bit later if things recover?" Like, what can someone do in terms of the getting the job offer rescinded? Is there any way to like get the offer later, or it's pretty much done and you have to move on?
Well, I think that that's a great question, Max. And so you can try to negotiate that and say, listen, can I start in 6 months or can I start in a year? That's certainly something that you can do. In these cases, Amazon was giving folks a month or two of salary. Twitter was giving folks 2 to 4 months. I think Coinbase was giving about 2 months. So sometimes the company will give you, salary, understanding that that you had expected to be getting paid and now you're not going to be. So you can certainly try to negotiate that, but companies don't have to really do anything. They don't have to give you a severance, and they don't have to employ you within 6 months or a year. So you, from that standpoint, you can certainly ask, but they don't have to necessarily give you anything.
Wow. So everybody talks about like moving jobs every few years to increase their salary, but many people don't talk about like there's a chance that the offer might get rescinded, especially with this economic climate. So besides getting the job offer rescinded, would you say it is rare? It really depends on the situation and what's going on right now. This is a rare situation.
That's
Um,
what it kind of feels like.
yeah. So what other risks are there in taking a new job?
There's always risk, right? Like the company, you could start the job and they could decide within a few weeks or a few months that they don't need you anymore. Maybe you just, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong. Maybe they assign you to a spot that, maybe you were supposed to go in product management, and then they decide to move you into a different department. So there's always risk. And as you said, job hopping has become so common lately. And, the instance I saw on LinkedIn, the person had, a great job at HP that they were happy with, but they were getting a raise at Amazon. And so they were willing to take the move, literally had moving vans in front of their house ready to go. And then Amazon calls and says, yeah, we don't need you anymore. So, it's a tough place to find yourself in.
Is it possible for them to go back to their old job even though they handed in their resignation, or it's one of those things that it's too late now?
Well, that's a great question too, Max. And I think if you left your company, in a good way, which means you didn't burn bridges, you were respectful, you did a good job while you were an employee, then I think certainly it makes sense to go back to your old boss and say, listen, this is what happened to me, and I'd be happy to come back. But again, maybe they'll take you back and maybe they won't, so that's really going to be up to their discretion. But if you were happy with your past employer, then maybe, you could go back and talk with them. But again, that's going to be at their discretion.
Yeah, there's a risk for their side too, right? It's similar to the counter offer where you've
Right.
already given them the job offer from another company, and then they're scared because then they have to fill some really quick. So then they'll do a counter offer. You end up staying, and then research has shown that people who take counter offers tend to not stay that long at the company afterwards. So there is a bit of risk in regards to the former employee taking you back. Have you had like, experiences like working with your clients in regards to like where a job offer got rescinded, or they took the counter offer and realized that yeah, it may have been better option just to like find something else?
Yeah. So I personally, none of my clients have had offers rescinded. As far as counter offers, for me, I typically advise my clients not to go to take the counter offer and stay with their current company. It's for all the reasons that you just talked about. If you were serious about leaving, and you were taking an offer with another company, it it typically does not turn out well. Now, I have seen it happen where, you know, folks left their company, worked for the other company for 6 months or a year, and said, listen, I didn't like it. I saw what it was like on the other side. That old job was a better fit for me. Would you take me back? And that does work out okay in some instances, because people have kind of gotten it out of their system, so to say. They tried the other company, they tried the other job, they came back with a different, with different experience, and maybe appreciated their old job a little bit more. So in those instances, I've seen it work out. But I the counter offer thing, to me, I've not seen that work out well.
Yeah, as you say, the grass isn't always greener, right? What you said, where like you jump ship and then you realize a few months later that this is not for you. Let's see if I can like come back, right?
Right.
And you said like as it goes back to what you said, as long as you don't burn bridges and have a good conversation, then there's a good chance that they will take you back, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And sometimes it's out of your manager's control. Maybe they're on a hiring freeze and you're unlucky, but in some cases it does work out. So there's a lot of different factors at play. That's why, even if you are really really unhappy in your job, you really should never burn those bridges.
Absolutely. And going back to what you said about the returns in regards to like, let's say you're lucky to get severance, there's still the issue of you don't have a job right now, and now your resume has that employment gap. So let's say you got severance, so at least you got a few months, or even worst case, you get nothing and you're out of a job. What can someone do to address that employment gap so they are still seen as marketable? Because as you know, recruiters tend to prefer someone that's currently working compared to someone who's not.
Right. No, absolutely. So I recommend that folks put that both on their LinkedIn and their resume profile. So, in these cases, I would tag Amazon and I would say, targeted start date was December 2022. Offer was rescinded 2 weeks before start date. And so, you know, basically made it through, an extensive hiring process, and really, being offered a role at Amazon is really prestigious. And so you want to play that up. It's not your fault that the offer is rescinded. And so even though you're not getting paid, and you never really formally work for the company, certainly you want to put that on your LinkedIn profile and your resume so that recruiters know, hey, listen, this person, was supposed to be working at Amazon, had their offer pulled really through no fault of their own.
And then like once you do get the new job that's more stable, then you would take it off the LinkedIn and resume, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just there as a place gap, while you're waiting to find something else, and to let folks know that, you had intended to go to Amazon, but it just didn't work out.
Have you known anybody that has used this tactic, and what were the results of it?
Yeah. So, I know that the folks that folks have put that on LinkedIn and their resumes. I don't know how quickly they've been able to pick up jobs after that, but it certainly is something that folks are using in order to make sure that it's not seen as a gap, because it really, again, it wasn't their fault. And it kind of explains, I made it through this really tough hiring process. It just, the offer was pulled.
Okay, and in regards to addressing it in the interview, so let's say you are able to get an interview at a company with the resume based off what you add in terms of the job offer getting rescinded. So when the recruiter or hiring manager asks you, "Oh, can you tell me more about like what happened with the job offer getting rescinded?" How would someone address that in an interview question?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, that's a great question too. I would be very open and honest, and, say, basically, just how you're addressing it in your LinkedIn and resume, and say, I made it through a really tough hiring process. I don't hold anything against Amazon. I mean, you definitely don't want to trash talk, because that doesn't reflect well upon yourself. But, just say, listen, I'd made it through this really tough hiring process, and it didn't work out. And so, I would be upfront though. I know that was one question folks were asking on LinkedIn is, you know, should I hide it? And it's nothing to hide, not in an interview, not in your resume, not in LinkedIn. It's something to be very upfront about, because it's really nothing to be embarrassed about.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before, if you got a job offer at Amazon, even though it got rescinded due to no fault of your own, the Amazon hiring process is very intensive,
Right.
and the fact that you passed all of that and got the job, like, that does speak volumes of your capabilities.
Exactly.
In regards to the job offer getting rescinded, is this a good time to look for work right now, especially in tech, where a lot of layoffs are currently happening? Or do you think that people should stay back in their current job if they're at least like content with it? Because again, there is a lot of risk right now with the uncertainty in the economic climate. So, would you recommend someone who is like okay with the job right now just to weather the storm and stay put, or you think it's still a good time to move, even with a higher risk of getting their offer rescinded due to the economic climate right now?
Especially tech. Tech is such an odd space right now where, certain pockets are hiring. I know, I had a client that landed a job at TikTok recently, so there are tech companies that are still hiring. You know, the offer rescinded thing, since it doesn't happen that often, you know, you know, should that fear keep you from, looking at another job? I mean, it depends on your situation, right? So if you feel like this is a great opportunity for you, and, you feel fairly confident, then, then I can see taking the job, but there, as you said, there's risk. And, and it also depends on your situation. If you are younger and single and you don't have kids, then maybe you look at it differently than a family with kids. Certainly, it, depending on your situation, if you can afford to be without pay for a couple months, then maybe it's not as big of a deal as if, like, you have a family that you're trying to support. So the amount of risk you're willing to take on is really a personal sort of thing.
I'm gonna touch upon the severance again. So you're saying like Amazon, Twitter, they do give severance packages. Was it offered, or did the person have to actually negotiate it?
These were offered. So what I saw, one person, for my online research, someone got a month, someone got 2 months, someone else got 4 months, and that was what they were offered. But then folks were trying to kind of gauge, kind of compare and see, who got what, and, trying to leverage that to go back and negotiate.
Okay, so let's say the offer gets rescinded, and they didn't say anything about severance. What can you do to like see if you can negotiate at least something? Would you like go to a lawyer? Can you do it on your own? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you certainly could go to a lawyer, but, honestly, you don't have a lot of legal standing here. So, you can certainly show the damages that were done. Especially if you had, in the scenario we talked about earlier, where you were working at HP, you were making good money, you had a secure job, and then you left that to go to Amazon. I mean, certainly there were damages there by taking the Amazon offer, and you accepted that in good faith. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, how you can exactly work that. I understand Amazon was giving this person a month's salary, just, again, in good faith. But I mean, I think we both know a month isn't going to make that person whole. And so, you know, it's up to the person to kind of think through, what's the amount of money that's going to make me whole here? Is it going to take me 4 months to find a job? Is it going to take me 6 months to find a job? Especially if I can't go back to my old job. And in some of these cases, folks were just graduating from master's programs, and unfortunately, their visas are going to be up. And so they have 60 or 90 days to find a new job, or else they would have to leave the states. And so that's a whole other, basically changing people's lives over this. So there's a lot of factors at play. The legal part, you certainly could talk to a lawyer. Again, I don't know what your legal standing is here, but you know, you definitely want to think through what would it take to make you whole.
Yeah, I just touched upon a point that I wanted to discuss. So I've seen, as you have seen, a lot of LinkedIn posts about how they got their job offer rescinded and they're an international individual, and then they have to get a job at a certain amount of period, or they have to go back home.
Right.
So, what is your suggestion where they have a job offer like Amazon or a big tech company, so they're able to like stay in the U.S. and then they get their job offer rescinded, and now they're panicking because they only have like 90 days to get a new opportunity or they have to leave. So what's your advice on and strategy to like quickly get back on your feet?
Yeah, so for those students, so I saw a number. My alma mater is Carnegie Mellon, and I saw a number of students from Carnegie Mellon in the situation. So if they do happen to be listening, what I would recommend is going back to career services as a start and just explaining the situation that you know it's kind of a desperate situation for you to find something. And so maybe you can find a research job at the university in the interim. Maybe you can find a short-term consulting gig or something like that while you're trying to figure it all out. But you really, I mean, clearly need to be proactive about trying to find something. And that's why we saw those folks posting on LinkedIn, because they so clearly needed something. And I think you've seen too, there are tech jobs out there, so it's not that companies aren't hiring. It may not be exactly what you're looking for, but certainly you want to reach out to your network. You want to reach out to career services. Try to make friends with some recruiters on LinkedIn. And really be honest about the situation that you find yourself in. Again, you don't need to hide that information. It's nothing to be embarrassed about, but you want to be definitely proactive about reaching out to folks.
So we've discussed in terms of getting your job offer rescinded, obviously a loss of income, don't know where to start, and then potentially having to go back to your home country because now you don't have a job, so your visa is going to expire. What other things should people look out for once their job offer gets rescinded?
Yeah, so I think part of it is just even how you feel emotionally, and it, you know, these folks were so excited. Landing a job at Amazon is a really big deal, and it's going to be hard to match that kind of role. Like, you're not, how many Amazons are there? Like, so there's only, a few big names like that. So I think it's getting, in the mindset that just because this didn't work out for you, it has nothing to do with your abilities. You shouldn't let it shake your confidence. I know, when I work with my clients who have lost their jobs, a lot of times they take it personally, even though it has nothing to do with their abilities. So, for folks that find themselves in that situation, you did nothing wrong. It's, and again, we're talking about the situations where your offer was rescinded due to no fault of your own. There are times where your offer is rescinded because you didn't, pass the background check, all those things. That's a different story. But in this case, really, there's nothing to be ashamed of. So you just have to, go forward and do the best you can.
In terms of the background check, I always tell people that a resume is not a legal career document; it's a marketing document. And one of the things that is commonly asked is about job titles. Do you have to have the exact job title in your job when you apply? And the reason why I want to ask this is that different companies have different like tiers in titles, right? So, for example, let's say you're a project coordinator, but you're doing responsibilities of a project manager. Or another example would be, let's say you have this like funky title from a startup called like growth marketing. In reality, it's just a marketing manager job. So, what's your thoughts on in terms of like changing the job title to uh, appease the masses, so to speak? And how to do it so you don't go overboard as if you're actually lying. Because I understand like you can't say you're a director when you've only done a coordinator or specialist position. I get
Right.
that, and I'm assuming my listeners do as well. But what's the line in terms of like changing the job title to appease the masses?
Right. No, that's a great question. So, what I typically do for my clients is I really try to spell out the work that they're doing. So sometimes my clients will have the flip where they're in a director role, but maybe they're doing VP work, So in those cases, and really in all cases, you're trying to spell out in the resume what work you're actually doing. And then when you have a funky title like that, you could put in parentheses, maybe like like a marketing director role, but making it clear that you weren't actually a marketing director, because you don't want to get caught on that back end that where you were trying to present yourself in a way that isn't necessarily true. So that those are great points. You need to be really careful on your resume. It is a marketing document, but you're when you're giving that to a company, you're saying that this is true. And so if you're talking about getting a degree, let's say you didn't get your degree, but you just took coursework, you do want to make it clear, like marketing coursework. If it's not a marketing degree, okay, but just be clear about that.
In regards to we talked about this like earlier in our conversation about let's say you don't pass probation and you end up getting let go. Obviously layoffs are easier to explain, say, because it's usually no fault of your own. Maybe it's restructuring, maybe it's the company's not doing well financially and have to let certain team members go. But when it comes to getting let go after probation, it's usually a performance related issue. So how would someone overcome that part of their career?
Yeah, so I really recommend that folks be honest. And I had a client not long ago who ran into that situation, and she was embarrassed and she didn't know how to handle it. And I but she'd done a lot of great stuff before. And so my recommendation to her was just to be honest about what happened, to that that something had happened early on in the probation process. She was let go. She's super embarrassed about it. But here's her track record in the past. And, I think when you try to hide those sorts of things, or, not own it, I think that it, I don't know. You really want to be honest, and you don't want it to come up later on, for someone to come back to you and say, well, you explained it this way, but this is how it really went down. You really want to be upfront. And so, that's for me, and when I advised my client to be upfront, she did get the new job because she was open and honest, and they appreciated her being candid. So, my advice to folks is, if you find yourself in that situation, not to be embarrassed about it. It does happen. And and it happens to a lot of good folks. So don't be embarrassed, but just own it and just say, listen, this is what happened. And but here's my track record of succeeding in the past, and this is how I'm going to you know solve problems for you.
I'm recording this end of December, but I'm going to release this in the first quarter of 2023. So it's definitely a good time to discuss 2023 job search trends with you, Colleen, because you obviously have a wealth of experience in this space. So what are some job search trends that you are seeing that job seekers slash professionals should look out for to ensure that they are drastically improving their odds to getting their next job?
Yeah, I mean, well, clearly you want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is updated. And by updated, I mean that you have the right skills in place. You can put up to 50 skills in. Make sure that you audit yourself every 6 months and make sure that the skills that are in there are the most important skills for the jobs that you're targeting, because that's where recruiters are looking for talent. And so, even if you are not interested in looking for a job, it's just so smart to make sure that you have your LinkedIn profile updated, because you never know what opportunity is going to find you. So, I don't think that that's going to change. I'm hearing more about like AI technology as far as in the whole process. You know, I know I've had clients come to me kind of concerned because they have screening with the one way video, and I get how that would be frustrating, because you and I are talking right now, so we're able to connect, and I to you have to really focus to do that technology. And the client that I was talking with, this is someone who has like interviewed folks for years and has a ton of interviewing experience. And she was like, I did this AI interview and I like was at a total loss of how to even, go about recording myself or just, how to interact with the technology. And so, it's, you know, that's here. And so, figuring out how to best navigate that. I'm sure you've seen on LinkedIn, people are talking about having the chatbot write your resume. Like, so there's a lot of, those kind of things are kind of out there. And I do recommend job seekers, kind of start to familiarize themselves with technology. Not that you want a chatbot to write your resume, but just to know what's out there as far as technology so that, you're not kind of getting lost in the shuffle, because that's where it feels like things are going.
Your takeaways are obviously have an optimized LinkedIn profile because again, a lot of recruiters are still looking at candidates through LinkedIn search, and then understanding AI and learning how to use it effectively for your own job search, or even during the interview process, how companies are using it.
Yeah, I just think it's smart practice to understand what's out there right now. And and if you find yourself on the other side, if you're hiring folks, think about how you're approaching that. Like, do you want your first contact with a candidate to be with AI technology? Because folks are really turned off by it, so it's, or at least the folks that I'm talking with aren't really happy with how that's going. So, it's just that's, the biggest buzz. I mean, there's definitely still jobs out there. I think we're going to see these layoffs through 2023, especially in the tech space. But, there are definitely still jobs out there. Folks should be hopeful, but, but also be aware that the economy has shifted, and it's not, the outlook isn't the same as it was in 2022. When we started in 2022, it was still great resignation, and like anyone who's looking for a job, it felt like you could find a job in 2 weeks, and now with my clients, it's a little bit more of a cautious approach. I mean, hopeful, but not, it's not the same market as it was in the beginning of the year.
Can you dive deeper into your market insights in terms of like industries, in terms of like, let's say maybe people are turned off by tech right now with all the layoffs. What industries should someone look to pursue if they want to pivot their career?
Yeah, so I think, healthcare still seems very strong. It- you know, I mean, and maybe it's not even as much industry as it is like, you know, I think, you know, I don't know. I think for me, I try to focus my clients maybe not as much on industry and then more on roles. So, and maybe even skills. So, I had a client recently who wasn't sure. She was a lawyer and now she doesn't want to practice law, but she likes investigation. So for her, maybe consider alternative career paths. So, for her, I recommended go into LinkedIn and type in the keywords investigation and fraud and like the things that you're interested in. And so instead of searching based on industry or based on title, maybe search based on keyword and see what comes up, because she was like shocked at all these rules that fit her but weren't necessarily things that she was thinking about. So instead of getting stuck on an industry or a title, maybe like change it up a little bit and think about keywords or the skills that you're interested in using instead.
And with that being said, what skills should someone be interested in pursuing? I know like data science has been hot for the past few years. So what are other like technical skills someone would be interested in learning to like up their value in the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, so data science, really any kind of like tech programming, that you can maybe use not in the tech industry, but just in that space. You know, I know supply chain has been, folks with that kind of expertise, figuring out how to get parts, all of that, uh, really the project management, kind of broad skills that you can, if you can do project management in one space, you could probably take that and use it in another space. So, you know, in the past, folks have been wanting to use that in tech, but maybe you could take it and use it somewhere else instead.
So again, it's all about focusing on, because no one starts from zero. Everybody thinks that when they make a career pivot, they have to start from zero. But there's a lot of transferable skills that you've developed over the years that you're not starting at zero. In fact, like you might be uh, very highly marketable because you have those skills. You're just missing that industry knowledge.
That's exactly it.
In terms of, how about like resume trends? Anything listeners should watch out for, or just like make it very simplistic and easy to read?
Yeah, so for me, I'm all about simple and easy to read. I I'm not much into the crazy formats or fonts or just even, you know, I I like quantified results. My undergrad is in engineering. So for me, it's all about the numbers and making it clear. For folks that haven't job searched in a while, some of my clients, they they have their old resume from 20 years ago. And so you'll have to remind them, please take your home address off. No one needs it. Just city, state, that's it. Make sure your LinkedIn URL is on there. If you don't know how to personalize it, you know, it really is very simple. And so, you can just go on LinkedIn help, or, folks can DM me and I can send them the quick list of instructions to do that. But, really kind of showing that you are savvy without you don't have to go nuts to show that you're savvy. You can, personalize your LinkedIn URL, little things. Please don't put your picture on your resume. It doesn't need to be there unless it's an acting resume, like little things. I don't think that you need to go crazy on the format, and you want to make sure that those skills that you have in your resume are in LinkedIn so folks can find you.
Yeah, I'm assuming you agree. Like, remove references upon request, the objective statement, the
Yeah.
90s, 2000s of sections that are not necessary anymore.
Right. Exactly.
And speaking of the resume and like AI, obviously you discussed earlier about Chat GPT. I think that's the name of it. And
Yeah.
then you have all these like content creators teaching people how to like automate writing their resume. So what's your thoughts on that? Do you think it's a good tool to guide them, but you shouldn't like just write a AI resume then send it? There's still a need for resume writers, especially good experienced ones. Like, what's your thoughts on AI and how it will impact careers, job search for both the job seeker and the companies?
So I'll be curious to see how it goes. I think and everyone needs something different. So when folks come to a resume writer, sometimes they just need someone to talk to. I mean, often my folks are almost looking for a career therapist. Someone to just they've been through like some tough times and they need someone to talk to, and so I can kind of talk them through that. You know, can the chat GPT do that? I don't know. Maybe they can teach it to do that, but I've seen the same demos on LinkedIn as you have, where like folks put in certain information, and then the bot comes and it plugs it out. So you know I will be curious to see where the industry is in 5 years. And if and maybe the bot can ask the right questions for certain people and help them through that process. That for some people that may be enough and that might work for them, and I totally get it. Um, it really just depends on the technology, if they're asking the right questions, if they and I think, Max, too, different resume writers and career coaches view things in completely different ways. Sometimes folks will come to me and say, well, I heard from this career coach that you know and folks just disagree sometimes on what the right approach is. And so that'll be interesting too, how that all fits together with all of the technology. And yeah, I will be curious to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, same here. It's definitely an interesting time in the career space. And speaking of careers, a good portion of my listeners are trying to make a career change. And you mentioned earlier that you had your bachelor's in engineering, right? So how did you pivot from like engineering into career coaching?
Yeah, so it was steps. So my undergrad was engineering. I started with Procter and Gamble and worked as an engineer and production manager, and was actually in Canada for several years. And I'm originally from Pittsburgh. Decided I wanted to come back home, so I got my MBA. So that was my first step. I got my MBA, and then I was an analyst for FedEx. So I did the analyst work, and then I had my first child 17 years ago, and I decided I wanted something more flexible. I had not taken a writing class since high school. But I always loved to write. And so I started writing about things that I liked. And I was a contributor for the Motley Fool because I liked investing. So that was kind of my segue into writing. And at the same time, I started writing resumes. And so ended up getting certified. And I really found that my background in engineering and business prepared me to be a resume writer because I understood what folks were talking about. So, especially for folks that were in when I was writing resumes for clients who were in business or engineering, I I knew what questions to ask and I knew how to kind of present that information. So, my biggest advice is that it's a step by step process. And so, you know, no one starts out in life wanting to be a resume writer or career coach. It's not something that they talk about in high school and say like, "Hey, why don't you go be a career coach or a resume writer?" But for me, it was a step by step process. And, you know, it's not linear, but you can always take those transferable skills and, branch out. And so, it's really just making a case for yourself and saying, my engineering analysis skills I could use when I was an analyst for FedEx, and then, when I'm working with clients, I still work with numbers, I just use that in a different way. And I'm still analyzing the information that they put on their resumes. It's just doing it in a different way. So my advice would be for folks that are listening and interested in doing a career change is, really thinking about what they enjoy doing most, and then kind of thinking about how they've succeeded in the past and how to position themselves to, because you're right, to be an undergrad in engineering and then now as a resume writer, it you would think, how would you do that? And again, it's a step by step. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's possible.
Absolutely. And what is some advice that you can give to end off our recording in regards to someone looking for a new job in the new year?
Yeah, so I if you're looking for a new job in the new year, I would again recommend you stay hopeful. And if you're going on LinkedIn, you know, be curious, like follow new companies, reach out to new folks, keep that LinkedIn profile updated because you never know who will find you. I've had a lot of clients have success just having folks find them because they have an updated profile, so it's really just staying hopeful and trying to stay focused but not like hyper focused. You need to relax a little bit too, and just again try to be open to different opportunities. Maybe you wanted to be in tech and you know but maybe you're going to have to think about a different industry this time, and be open to that. Be open to changing industries, be open to maybe using your skills in a different way.
That wraps up our conversation, Colleen. And I want to end our discussion with one last question that I ask all my guests.
Okay.
So, as you know, my podcast is about helping professionals overcome common career challenges to take them to the next level. So, for you, throughout your extensive career, what was one big career challenge that you had to overcome to get to where you are today?
Yeah. So, I would say my biggest thing is confidence. And like, I've had different stages. I have 4 kids. And so sometimes my career is kind of taken a back burner to, raising my kids. And it I'll be honest, it's hard to come back sometimes. And you start to lose a little bit of confidence. And so my advice would be, if you find yourself in that place where maybe you were laid off, or maybe you're not in the job that you want to be in, or just your situation is not where you want it to be, is to reach out to folks and and to if you can't be a cheerleader for yourself, find someone else to be a cheerleader for you. Yeah, reach out to. Oh, I'm happy to be your cheerleader, but find a group to kind of like cheer you on along the way, and not let that drag you down.
And how can people find out more about what you do, Colleen, and how you can help them in their career?
Yeah, so they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I don't know how many Colleen Paulsons there are on LinkedIn, but if you just put in Colleen Paulson Career Coach, you'll be able to find me. And I'm happy to connect with folks and answer any questions that they might have.
Awesome. Again, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much for watching. For more content on careers, job search, and self improvement, make sure to hit that subscribe button.